Is that a good use of taxpayer dollars? That's a harder question for me. It's easy to say, should you be given outlets? Should you be given the New York Times money? It's different if you're talking about the Topeka, Kansas Register newspaper.
Why would you give them money, though? I don't think left,
it's a
right,
debatable
center,
issue.
anybody should get money from the government because in a way, your loyalty lies there because they're paying you.
Right.
In this video, Patrick Bet-David interviews Chris Cuomo on the PBD podcast. Patrick Bet-David and his co-host were shocked at Chris Cuomo suggesting that it's okay for the government to fund media outlets. With that, let's watch Patrick Bet-David and the gang over at the PBD podcast roast woke Chris Cuomo for his ridiculous comments.
Why on earth is our government, through USAID, sending money to a news outlet?
Right.
Why are they doing that? This is not like, hey, we're all going to go over to Vietnam for, this commemoration of this, and, we'll help you with travel. A couple of you extra people can be on Air Force One. Those things happen. But this is, why are you giving them the money for this? Then there was a indication, this is my favorite. Apparently Politico, by a couple hours, was the first breaker of the Russian interference story during the election.
Weird.
And so it's like, wow. So now the question is, was the government not only sending money, but was the government also sending narratives? 4 o'clock, the story will be Russian interference, and here's what we got. It doesn't look good. It looks very, very gooey is the word I'm coming up with for Politico.
You're dovetailing a little bit with what Schellenberger's been talking about with some other coordination that he found between government funding and the CIA and the media, which is very cloudy at this point. The problem with this story when it came out, and I believe it was most likely leaked by the Doge guys because of who broke it, you don't see far-right podcasters breaking a lot of news, right? And they all came out at once with this story, so somebody probably leaked it to them. It was leaked as a USAID story, and it isn't. Most overwhelmingly, the money does not come from USAID.
It's only 44 grand from
right,
USAID.
but it is. So they came out heavy on USAID. Why? Because that's the narrative that they wanted to run, right? And that's what was leaked to them. That's the problem with not being an accountable media organization, is that you'll just take what you're fed. But there is two legitimate questions here. There are two legitimate questions. One is, should taxpayer dollars be going to any outlet for any reason, okay? Because of the inherent conflict that Tom is bringing up. And I think that's a legitimate question, and it's a little surprising. I've never heard of this before. There's a second question, though. Congress funds a lot of regional and local media. A lot of outlets are dying, right? Local news is struggling in a lot of places, especially in print. There's a lot of subsidies. Is that a good use of taxpayer dollars? That's a harder question for me. It's easy to say, should you be given outlets? Should you be given the New York Times money? It's different if you're talking about the Topeka, Kansas Register newspaper.
Why would you give them money, though? I don't think left,
it's a
right,
debatable
center,
issue.
anybody should get money from the government because in a way, your loyalty lies there because they're paying you.
Right.
Yeah, I don't.
That's the argument.
No,
but I'm saying we haven't heard that
give the
story
opposing
yet.
argument, though. Argue it and say the argument that people would say no, we should fund these small little media organizations. What is that argument for?
In the public interest of information and news, that you want an informed citizenry, and that these outlets are going to close down. There will be fewer outlets. There'll be more.
So Chris Cuomo is framing his question as if, it's a great political question if we should fund news organizations, when I wholeheartedly believe that he thinks the taxpayers absolutely should. I think he's only tiptoeing around it because he knows he's in a room full of people that are like, are you crazy? I mean, the answer is simple. The government shouldn't be funding any media organization. It's an immediate conflict of interest. And he talks about how local news is dying, print media is dying. Exactly. So why would the taxpayers pay for a news medium or news mediums that are dying? It's not as if you're investing in it to build it back up just because it's been mismanaged. It's becoming obsolete. So if you were an individual investor, a personal investor, you wouldn't invest in something that's dying or dead. So why should the American people have to? Anyway, let's get back to the video.
Driven by agendas, and we want to make sure that there's a robust, free media, even if that means there has to be some supporting of smaller outlets that wouldn't survive in the marketplace. That's the argument.
Remember, Voice of America was funded by the government. It's supposed to be out there, right, on a global basis, capitalism, freedom, and all that. Well, all they did is the government has taken that same technique and said, hey, wait a minute. If we do it that way, then we could also do it this way, and we could, whoever's in power, has the power of the pendulum swinging that side of the aisle, and go and spend the money and do it.
Look, you can argue that we are living proof right now that you don't need to do it this way anymore. Again, it's a political question, not a legal question. And I think that the media has evolved in a way where everybody has immediate access to information and they have their own microphone. So maybe the situation has changed and it's time to look at it, because every dollar you save is a deliverable on what the promise of the last campaign was.
I'm looking at this one here. It says political received $44,000 from USAID. But was given millions more from by other agencies.
Yeah, mostly HHS.
HHS gave him $1.37 million.
Yeah.
Why?
So I did a little research on this. They have an energy, they have a special product that has like deeper experts and stuff. But here's the problem. Congress buys subscriptions also, Pat. But they do like a subscription that you can go in and everybody uses the same code for the New York Times so that all members of Congress can get access to these different media outlets. I don't have so much of a problem with that. They want to subscribe to Valuetainment so that everybody can see what's going on here. That's cool. They should be informed about what's happening at significant places. It's when you allow it on an individual basis, you wind up netting up these costs. And now you have like 937, as we were talking about earlier, your own audit, people getting separate subscriptions.
Yeah.
That's when it gets expensive.
This comes down to basically one thing. It's the government efficiency.
Yeah.
So imagine you're a family and your income is $100,000 a year, okay? And then you look at your line-by-line budget, or your audit, as Pat called it, and hold on, guys, our income is $100,000, but we spent $120,000. But not only did that this year, we did that last year, the year before, and the year before.
But it's also not car and driver. It's the New York Times, and there is a conflict.
But I don't even know what that means, Cuomo, but let me get to my
Car
point.
and Driver magazine, who cares if you subscribe? There's no agenda.
Yeah.
You subscribe to the New York Times, there's a conflict.
Okay, but I'm talking about income and
I thought it was
expenses
a pretty
budget.
simple point.
good.
But
It was simple,
the
right?
point is this. Imagine that you're the U.S. government. How much was our U.S. government income this year? $5 trillion. How much was our expenses?
Do you hear how crazy the logic Chris Cuomo used is? If the government doesn't fund news outlets, then you'll have more news outlets driven by agendas. What are you talking about? I'm sorry to break this to everyone, but news outlets are always going to have bias because we're human beings. And though many people don't want to admit they have bias, we all do. Having an agenda is a choice. Pushing specific narratives because of your bias is different. But the second you get the government involved in subsidizing various news outlets, now there's definitely an agenda. Now the likelihood of an agenda increases significantly. If you notice, Chris Cuomo keeps glossing over the USAID thing as if it was kind of misreported on by the right, he specifically pointed out. But $8 million going to Politico, and you're focused on, did USAID send it to him or was it another agency? You're missing the point of the story. And not to mention, we know all the crazy things that USAID was funding. LGBTQ comic book in Peru, LGBTQ musical in Ireland, $1.5 million to Serbia to implement DEI in their workplaces. I mean, stop acting as if USAID isn't a story. It's a story. The bulk of the money given to news outlets by the government may not have come out of USAID, but it has come out of other agencies, which only strengthens Donald Trump and the DOJ department's case that everything needs to be audited because we're wasting so much money. Anyway, let's get back to the video.
$6.8 trillion. There's a deficit of $1.8 trillion. Guys, these aren't small numbers. These aren't millions. These aren't billions. Almost $2 trillion we're in the red. So how long is that sustainable for? Pat, we talked about the U.S. GDP of what it was in 2024. How much was it? $29 trillion.
And okay, you know which party cares about that more?
Hopefully both, but it's probably the Republican Party.
Neither. Neither give a damn.
Well, the Tea Party,
never cut spending.
The Tea Party,
on their
I would say agrees with that, but I don't know if they do anything. But the point is, what's our federal debt?
$37
trillion. How long is this sustainable for? So what she said, Caroline Levin said one thing that was actually super important. She goes, We're going to go everything line by line. Hell freaking yeah. Let's go line by line
right.
and see if this
What
serves
you're
the interests
supposed
of the
to do.
American people.
I just hope
that's what an
I just
audit
hope they
is.
keep doing it.
Hopefully they figure this
You
out
said
and they
you-
save
you
that
hope
money.
they do that?
I hope they keep doing it. I have a feeling.
Why would they stop doing it?
Because something else will become more important. And
I don't-
there'll be
right.
the Iran nuclear
If you like watching videos like this one, like and subscribe. We'd really appreciate it. Let's get back to the video.
deal. It'll be what's happening in Ukraine, and then people stop covering it. They stop paying attention. You stop hearing about it.
Well, I mean, I don't think that'll happen because isolating responsibilities to certain individuals. Trump may get sidetracked with a different issue, but the Doge, their job is to cut. Like, the numbers came up that X's EBITDA went up. I don't know if you saw the numbers about X's
really?
EBITDA went up
Yeah.
the last 24 months. Now, wait a minute. How did the EBITDA double in 24 months? Well, he was able to make they're losing money. They're doing this. They're doing that. The story just came out. We'll cover that story here in a minute. But Vinny, you want to say
Yes.
something?
So I mean,
Cut
so
70% of his labor force. Also.
yeah, 6,500
means you
employees
didn't need
gone.
them.
He didn't need any of them.
Exactly. He cut 70% of his labor force. That's what we need to do with the U.S. government. And that's why we need to go line by line like they're talking about. Adam makes a good point. If you're a citizen of the United States, you can't just spend your money like an asshole. There are consequences because if you do, the government will be on top of you quicker than you can blink. So why should the government be able to spend that way? And finally, I hate agreeing with Chris Cuomo, but until now, neither party has ever cared about reducing spending. They talk about it, but they never do it. So it's a big undertaking, but we're finally getting started on it. And anybody who opposes auditing the government and trying to reduce wasteful spending has an agenda, or they're just opposing it because it's the Republicans doing it. Because who wouldn't want to cut wasteful spending, keep more money in Americans' pockets? But we want to hear from you. What do you all think about the government funding media outlets? What do you think about Doge and the job they're doing? And are you as excited as I am about identifying areas of waste in our government and getting rid of them? And not to mention uncovering corruption as well. I don't care what side of the aisle they're on. I hope this does uncover some of the shady dealings we know are going on in Washington. Let us know. Anyway, as always, really appreciate you watching, and we will see you in the next one.